First, a disclaimer, when I talk about food, I'm talking about wine. When I'm talking about food, I'm talking about wine. It's the same thing to me, and it should be to all of you. I'm actually here to tell the truth. Well, a couple of truths, really. First, I got to tell you that I never, ever set out to become a sustainable wine grower. That wasn't the goal. I met a chef recently. He was new to the area. He was talking about his new restaurant that he was about to open, and he was really excited, really passionate. And I started getting really excited as well. He was talking about sourcing local produce, talking about all the purveyors he was going to use, about sustainability, all these catchphrases. And I started asking him about who he was using. I asked about the seafood program that he was going to use, and asked him if he was going to use a few of the people that I knew off the coast of San Diego. And he stopped and paused for a minute, and he said, you know, really, I just kind of don't like Pacific Ocean fish. That set me back on my heels a little bit. The more we talked, the more I realized he was saying all these things, but his actions weren't matching his words. He wasn't telling me the truth. Now, you have all these words. You have sustainable, you have organic, biodynamic. Sustainability is probably one of the most often used, and in my opinion, overused phrases. You have large supermarket chains. You have the fast food chains now talking about sustainability. Organics is another one that you hear. Organics, in my opinion, and in my industry, can be really pretty confusing. I believe it to be heavily over-regulated. I'll give you an example. If I was a winemaker in Europe, if I was making wine in France or Italy, and I wanted to put organic on my label, I can use sulfites in the production of that wine. If I do that in California, I can't. So to me, there's a big disconnect there. If a government or a border or an agency says you can or can't do something, that's not really looking out for the best interest of the people, the consumer, the producer. It's more concerned with regulating an idea. And then there's biodynamics, which I'm not even going to touch that one. Biodynamics is kind of a hot topic right now. You have people that are really vehemently pro biodynamics. You have people that are, talking about how it's a hoax. I'm going to send you to a website, a blog site. A gentleman, he's a winemaker up north. His name's Stu Smith. He's got a great blog called biodynamicsisahoax.com. If nothing else, it's a lot of fun. It's intellectually done. If you're looking for the truth, just go search out both sides of the argument and then make up your own decision. Now, these catchphrases, like I said, they can be misleading. What I suggest you do as a producer or as a consumer is just look for the truth. You have to know your farmer. You have to know your winemaker. You have to know what they're doing. You have to know why they're doing what they're doing. You have to ask these questions. Bottom line, again, I'm going to say it a million times today, is you have to just look for the truth. Don't get caught up in these catchphrases. Good farmers and good winemakers actually know the truth. That if you're farming for flavor, if you're farming for quality, that happens to be sustainable. Now, as I said, I actually never did set out originally to become a sustainable wine grower. Now, I came to the Temecula Valley in 1998, and I was intrigued with what I saw. There was a definite established wine growing community here. It was small, but it was here. And they were really passionate about what was going on. The people here said that this area is just like the other areas. They said all the wine growing regions in the world have the same thing that Temecula has. And I moved in, and I started to see that truth as well. I saw similarities in everything they were talking about. The sun truly does shine through the mist here. Now, all of these slides that I'm showing you, those are actually my own vineyard. All the fruit that you'll see is my fruit. This is the Temecula Valley that I know. The reason we're like this is we have a coastal influence. We actually have, I don't know how many people in the room or out there realize, we're 20 miles to the ocean from right where we're sitting. Directly through the mountain gap, the Rainbow Gap in the local mountains is the ocean. Oceanside Harbor is 20 miles from where we're at right now. So we do get that coastal influence. We have the hot days, we have the cold nights. How many times have you heard when people are talking about classic wine growing regions of the world, you hear hot days, cold nights? That's important, but one of the other things that people don't realize is the wintertime temperatures are just as important. You always hear about the summer and the growing season, but the winter temperatures are just as important, and we happen to be quite cold here in the winter. We get our hard frost. Occasionally, I'll talk to somebody in the tasting room or out in the field, and I'll say, we can't grow Hass avocados in Temecula. And more often than not, they'll look at me and they'll say, oh, wow, is it too hot? It's actually the opposite. It's too cold. Bougainvillea is another plant that doesn't do well in Temecula Valley because of the hard frost. A lot of the new residents that moved out, they built their grand homes, they put all these tropical plants around. A couple years ago, they lost them all. They lost thousands of dollars in plants because of the hard frost. Now, despite these similarities, though, when I first got here, I'll be honest, I didn't taste the quality. I didn't see it, didn't taste it. Now, keep in mind, I don't expect all wines from a certain region to taste just like other regions. I don't expect a Sangiovese grown in Sonoma to taste like a Sangiovese grown in Tuscany. I don't expect a Napa Cab to taste just like Bordeaux. But you do expect a level of quality in your produce, in your wine. One of the major truths, the longer I lived here, the more I looked into this industry, it wasn't obvious at first, but the more I looked, the more I found that our problem was proximity. Now, it's a good thing, but the problem with the quality was we were located within an hour drive of Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, to the East Palm Springs. We're lucky in that we have a huge wine drinking population within an hour's drive, which that translates into direct sales. These people are out visiting, they drive out for the day, they have a great time, they visit a couple wineries. They're not thinking about it too much, but they pick up some wines and they take it home. So I started asking myself, if it's that easy to sell the wines, where's the incentive? Why do the wineries need to put more time, more effort, and more importantly, more money into the vineyards and into the winemaking program when they're going to sell it out regardless? Now, a few of us actually, we wanted to do something different. The similarities, as I've said, they were here. But in order to compete with these other wine growing regions, we needed to do something about the quality. We had to start acting on the truth. We knew the truth about the valley, but nothing was being done to address it. We chose not to do what the other farmers were doing, which if anybody has grown up or known farmers, that's a challenging thing. Farmers are stubborn. You can ask my wife. So we had to pay attention to the truth. And I'm sorry I'm saying that over and over again, but that's an important part. We wanted to treat our vines and ultimately our wines like the growers in other regions. The most important change that we had to make was in our minds. We had to start approaching our vineyards and ultimately our wines and start making them for higher quality, not for the sales. Now, early on, the valley was predominantly grown in what's called a California Sprawl. All the vines kind of look the same. California Sprawl is a trellising system where there's a single upper wire, and as the vine grows up, they may or may not catch that wire, but they sprawl out. They grow into this big bush, and often they grow into the middle of the into the rows. What compounded the problem, though, that's not necessarily a bad trellis system, but the vines were being horribly overwatered. The farmers here, they realized that we are a low rainfall region, so they just assumed that the vines needed all this water. The water came on early in the season, and it was weekly, almost daily, throughout the entire season. So we had these massively overgrown vines. In my case, when I came to purchase the vineyard that I have, the vines actually grew up, massive bush, sprawled out into the center, met each other, each vine met each other, and touched the ground. So what this caused was a problem with powdery mildew issues. We had to repetitively spray sulfur dust to combat this. But more importantly, what we had was a situation where the fruit just was not getting sun and light. In order to get a high-quality cluster of grapes and ultimately a cluster of wine, you need that sun, which comes after all that mist fades away, to get into that fruit zone. The vines were out of balance. They were overgrown. We had mildew issues. if you have a vine that's out of balance and a grape ultimately coming into the vineyards that are out of balance, you're going to have a poor quality wine. Now, we made changes, and sometimes changes are incredibly simple to do. And a good thing for farmers is they don't have to be expensive. We went to vertical shoot position. We added a second upper wire to these vines. You can see in the picture there, we got that shoot growth, all the canopy up above the fruit zone, and that let all that air and all that sunlight penetrate, virtually eliminating any need for sulfur dusting. When I got here, sulfur dusting was done regardless of whether it needed to be done or not, every 7 to 10 days. I haven't applied sulfur in 8 years. Deficit irrigation was another thing. I mentioned overwatering. Deficit irrigation is an idea of giving the plant only what it needs, or even a little less than what it needs. We put soil moisture probes out into the vineyards. So now, rather than guessing, we know. In my system, I have a weather station out in the vineyards. At any time, I can pull up on the computer. Every foot down through the root zone tells me how much water is there. I can tell how much water is needed by the plant and how much to apply. I found that I cut my water bill over half just by knowing what's out there. Now, I realized that I was acting sustainably without even knowing it. Everything that I was doing, keep in mind, was for quality. But I soon found out that it was in line with sustainable practices. About the same time, our local Winegrowers Association put together a workshop called the Code of Sustainable Wine Growing Practices. And it's put on by two of the main trade organizations to help educate farmers on how to do the right thing, make the right choices. And it emphasizes the basic principles, the 3 E's of sustainability. Now, I realized that I was already, without even trying, environmentally sound and socially equitable. Just by making better quality wines, I was doing these too. But as a businessman, I found that third one, the economically sound and socially equitable. The economical feasibility of this was real intriguing to me as a businessman. Well, this happened to come at a very good time. I decided to take that newfound knowledge of sustainability and start applying it. We were building a new building. We were in construction, or just prior to construction. We were putting up a new warehouse that was going to contain our case goods and our barrels. So we had a lot of dollar value actually going into the building that we had to store. We had to keep this stuff at 60 degrees year-round. We realized that this was going to be a huge energy draw. So the obvious thing was to call the solar companies. We had a couple come out, and they did an assessment. And we soon found out that, unfortunately, it wasn't going to be economically feasible for us. The size of system to produce the amount of energy we needed for this building, it just didn't pencil out. So we started asking more questions. We looked deeper. We asked the architects. We revisited the builders. We said, what can we do? Here's our needs. What can we do here? Again, really simple stuff. We went with 2x8 framing on the walls. 2x8 framing, standard is 2x4. The 2x8 framing allowed us to put 3 to 4 times more insulation into the walls. We did the same thing to the ceiling. We put a load of insulation in the ceiling, and that solved a lot of the problems. We also added, you see there, a metal roof. That's a high reflectivity metal roof. So the heat wasn't getting in. It was reflecting off of the roof. It's attractive, and it'll probably last over 100 years without need for replacement. So I'll give you an example of how efficient this building is. Last month was one of the hottest months in recent years. Our energy bill on this building, 2,700 square foot at 60 degrees, doors opening and closing, was $200. So by doing all this, we realized that opened up a whole new set of opportunities. Now that's really efficient, but what's really great looking forward, we can revisit solar now. And for a much smaller system, a much more economically feasible system, we have the possibility of completely going off the grid. Now, we figured it out in the vineyards. We figured it out in the business, in the winery. And we started to realize that this is a sustainable life. I actually have a wife and 4 kids. We live on property. What we do in the vineyards directly influences our life. What we do in the winery directly influences us. So we started looking at this whole system as a farm. We didn't think of it as a vineyard or a winery or a house. Now it's a whole farm system. We raise our own chickens. You want to talk about farm fresh? We raise our own chickens. In the morning, we go out, we collect the eggs, and we have breakfast. We started raising pigs. We started raising cattle. All of these things, again, the point was to grow healthy, good-tasting food for our family. About a day after we got the cows, we realized there's waste. So, chickens and everything else. We were already recomposting. We were already using our waste from the winery. We were taking our skins and seeds and all the leftover pumice and grapes. We were already using that. Everything that didn't make it into the bottle was composted and put back out in the vineyards. But now, because of our lifestyle at home, we could add to that. Now we're adding manure in. We were completely, or not completely, we're close to closing the circle of what we take out versus what we put back into our environment, our home. As I mentioned, we also have drastically reduced the amount of water that we're using. Now, the point of all this is to tell you that I never ever set out to be sustainable in the first place. What I did was think things through and start making choices, and I suggest you do the same. Don't take these words as catchphrases. Think of them as a way of being, a way of doing things. Don't try to become sustainable, just attain sustainability through your actions. I realized early on, and through this whole process, that in my vineyard, in my winery, in my business, and more importantly, the whole circle, the whole personal life of this, that the most important thing you can do to attain sustainability is to just grow for quality. Thank you.